Good morning and welcome as we kick off part 2 of the Blue Economy webinar series. My name is Corinne Lynds and I'm the content director here at Actual Media. I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. Before I jump in and introduce today's panel, I'll give you a quick tour of the Crowdcast platform. By now, you've probably noticed a few people checking in on the right-hand side of your screen with the chat feature. Say hello, let us know who you are and where you're from. Right above the chat, you'll see an Actual Media icon. If you click follow, you'll continue to be updated on our Blue Economy series as new webinars are announced. And down below, you'll see a variety of information. You can see how many people are signed in to today's webinar, and you'll see the polls feature where we encourage you to cast your votes. You'll also see a little green button that will link to the speakers' websites, so be sure to check those out too. And most importantly is the Ask a Question feature. So please don't be shy about becoming part of the conversation. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is part 2 of the Blue Economy webinar series. In January, we kicked off part 1 with a discussion on defining the blue economy. It was followed by discussions on building the blue economy in February, growing the blue economy in March, and innovating in the blue economy in April. Today, we're talking about driving diversity in Canada's water industry. And yes, that is still the blue economy. I'm here to get the conversation started. Before I get going, it's a conversation I can't wait to get started with because I'm really passionate about developing Canada's more diverse workforce. But before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge the many First Nations and Indigenous peoples of Canada as the original stewards of this great country. I'm in Toronto, which is located on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We all share in the responsibility of our natural infrastructure, and there's much we can learn from the traditional knowledge of the land, water, and materials that allow us to build projects that benefit all Canadians. Okay, so let's get started and meet today's experts. I'm going to begin by inviting each of our panelists to the screen. Once they're all on screen, I'll have each of them spend a couple minutes to introduce themselves and quickly tell us a bit about where they're from, what their role is, and what perspective they bring to today's discussion. First one up is Tara Mascarenhas from Students on Ice. I'll just give us Tara a moment to get to screen. New little Jeopardy music. Here she comes. Awesome. And then next up we have Geni Peters from EcoCanada. It's one of those days where everything's a little slow. Good morning, Geni. Or it's actually Geni, sorry, that's my bad. And Carli Lang from Water First. And then, hello, good morning, Carli. And then next up we have Gillian Peters from Stantec. Good morning, Gillian. Awesome. All right, Tara, why don't you start us out? Give your, just spend 2-3 minutes to introduce yourself and how this topic is relevant to you today.
Yes, certainly. Thank you so much. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe here in the Gatineau Hills of Quebec. So yes, I'm Tara Mascarenhas. I'm the Director of Programs with the Students on Ice Foundation based in Gatineau. And the foundation was founded by a man called Jeff Green. He was on an expedition in Antarctica guiding adults. And he was so really, I suppose, overwhelmed, so impacted by what he saw there that he thought, imagine what impact this could have on youth if I could bring youth from around the world here. And so traditionally, that's what Students on Ice has done, brought youth to the Arctic and Antarctic to look at issues of environmental sustainability, leadership, Indigenous questions. We've been doing this for the past 20 years, of course, until COVID changed the shape of the way we do things. Personally, I joined the Students on Ice Foundation 5 years ago, and it was to work on an expedition to mark the 150 years of Confederation that traveled the length of the coastline from the Great Lakes around the Atlantic through the Northwest Passage and down to Victoria. So we saw a lot of water and a lot of diversity. But currently in my role as director, I oversee our expedition programs, our alumni program, and also our newest program, which is called Blue Futures Pathways. And Blue Futures Pathways was really set up to inspire and engage youth aged 14 to 30 in the opportunities offered by Canada's sustainable blue economy. And for us, that includes freshwater as well as marine environments, the cryosphere, so the ice, also wastewater. So we encompass all water environments. And what was very important to us was that we look at engaging non-traditional youth in these sectors, as they are traditionally managed by men, older men, who tend to be white. And so that is very important to the Students on Ice Foundation, and particularly to the Blue Futures Pathways program.
Fantastic. Thank you, Geni. Or Tara, sorry. I'm moving on to Geni now. So keen to get not get it Geni that I've made it Geni. Sorry. But you're up next either way.
Sounds good. Thank you. I'm from EcoCanada, which is a nonprofit organization, which is the steward of the environmental workforce in Canada. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you from Calgary, our head office, and Calgary is located in the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Nations, which include the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai. We'd also like to acknowledge the Tsuut'ina and the Stoney Nakoda, which include the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. And finally, the city of Calgary is the home to the Métis Nation of Alberta. The reason that EcoCanada is joining here today has a lot to do with the fact that we are mandated basically with getting people into the environmental sector, whether that's water related or not. And we do that through a number of various programs. We have specialty programs for training for Indigenous communities, individuals in Indigenous communities that are based in the traditional knowledge, in addition to the Western scientific knowledge. We have wage subsidy programs where we provide funding for employers who are interested in taking a chance on someone new, somebody who may not have experience, a co-op student or a young intern, so we can get them into the workforce and get them an opportunity. We also have an accreditation program for environmental courses in post-secondary education. So we put a lot of our efforts into trying to get the environmental workforce to be more diverse, looking at the opportunities for bridging the gap between the need for workers and the available supply of workers, and attracting new types of individuals to the sector.
Perfect. Thank you, Geni. And Carli, you're up next.
Hello, thank you. It's very nice to be here. I work for an organization called Water First, which is also a not-for-profit. We are based in Creemore, Ontario, about 2 hours north of Toronto. And that's the traditional territory of the Petun and the Anishinaabe nations, so in particular the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations. And we've been an organization called Water First for about 11 years now. And our work focuses on partnering with Indigenous communities to address water-related challenges that they're experiencing in their communities. And we have kind of 3 arms of our programming. We work with drinking water, with environmental water, and with bringing water science opportunities to youth in schools. So similar to Geni, I would say that, or sorry, Geni, I would say that we focus on bringing those science-related opportunities and training in a way that is supportive and more accessible to communities to So all of our training occurs in community, and we partner with either tribal councils or individual communities to tailor the training to those regions. Our drinking water training is an internship where we support the achievement for the certification for operators. But in addition to that, we also help facilitate an internship where the participants get to work in their local water treatment plant over the course of 18 months, partially to gain their hours that helps them become certified, but also so they get to see what this job is actually like and get a chance to practice it and become more confident in their skills as they go on to get a job after the internship. We also provide training related to getting jobs, to exposure to environmental water sciences, to public speaking, just different avenues and aspects that might become necessary to help them be successful in their careers. Our environmental science work is very project-based. So we identify projects within either a community or tribal council, traditional territory, and we train to that project. So that project could be water quality assessment, baseline water quality monitoring, fish habitat restoration. And once we've identified what the goals of the project are together, we help provide the training and support for the community members to execute the project. And last but not least, our school water program helps bring some really cool hands-on project-based learning opportunities for kids from kindergarten through grade 12 to just learn more about water science and realize career opportunities that are there for them if they want them.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Carli. And Gillian, over to you.
Hi, yeah. My name is Gillian Edwards, and I work, I'm an engineer. I work with Stantec Consulting. I'm also based out of Calgary, same as Geni, and so we do recognize that we're on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, Nakota Nation, as well as the Métis Nation. And at Stantec, inclusion and diversity has been one of our pillars for quite a few years now, and it's an engineering department or an engineering company. I work within the water business line specifically, where we do a lot of different projects touching all facets of water, from water and wastewater treatment to dams to river restoration, flood mitigation, kind of anything that's related to water. We get involved in those projects. We also recognize that inclusion and diversity is not something that's just important within our organization, but we look to support other organizations across North America when it comes to supporting inclusive and diverse workplaces.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. All right, let's jump into the discussion. There's no doubt that driving diversity in our workforces has become an increasingly important subject over the years. I was reflecting on this myself personally, in that I've been a business journalist for close to 20 years, as much as I hate to admit it. And I can't tell you how many times I've written about impending skills shortages. I remember very early on in my career writing about a robotics competition designed to attract young people to engineering. I've done a Habitat for Humanity build with WINC, which is a women in construction group, and that was meant to shine a spotlight on women in the skilled trades. I've written about a recruitment project that had Canadian manufacturers recruiting engineers and equipment operators in Ireland. And more recently, the team here at Water Canada and Renew Canada, our sister publication, have been talking quite extensively about partnerships and engagement with Indigenous communities to build sustainable workforces. So it's pretty clear to me that there are quite a lot of efforts being made to cultivate more diverse workforces. I'm excited to hear more specifically about what Canada's water sector is doing, and it sounds like already we're off to a great start. Now, now that I've got my rant out of the way, I'm curious to know just what diversity looks like. It's like, if we could begin just by defining what diversity means to you and your organizations. So what that would look like. What would successful diversity look like? I know it's kind of a big question, but I think it'd be a great way to sort of set the discussion up for today. Do we have a volunteer who would like to start? Or I'll just start picking names at random. Go for it, Tara.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we, at Students on Ice, as I said, from the beginning through our expeditions, we've increased over 20 years of bringing more and more diverse youth with us. And I think in 2019, our last big expedition, we had over 50% of our 120 youth were Indigenous, for example. But we realized, I think everybody had a bit of a reckoning last year with the events that took place in the States and then sort of rippled throughout the world. And we've had a lot of time to think, I think, through COVID as well, what diversity really means. And so at SOI, we we believe it's hard to talk about engaging diverse youth in our programs, for example, without starting in our own house. What does diversity look like within our own teams, and how do we represent? And so I did a little calculation yesterday. So we have 23 staff in total, and 78% of those 23 are female identifying, 61% bilingual, 48% aged 30 and younger, 26% visible minority, 26% newcomer, 13% indigenous, 13% identify as LGBTQ+2, 9% religious minority, and we cover 8 different provinces and territories. And that wasn't the case a year ago. I have to say that's all come about in the past year. And so we did that from the inside, but then when it came also to the programs, I think what was really important was also looking to our partner network. So who do we partner with? So we've increased diverse partners. So for example, we are partnered with EcoCanada, which was a new partnership for us on this Blue Futures Pathways program. And we look at, for example, newcomer facing organizations that work with immigrants. We look at religious minority organizations as well as the indigenous organizations and institutions throughout Canada. We've also started being very deliberate in the way that we collect data on our diversity. So, we very purposefully, when we're looking at participants for expedition, we make sure that we get every province and territory that we have representation, for example, that all of the Inuit Nunangat communities have representation. In the current Blue Futures Pathways program as well, we're making sure that we focus in on rural, remote communities, our diversity in the way that we look at water, as I said, it's marine environments, cryosphere, wastewater. So we're not just looking, for example, at people living along the coastline or around lakes, but also landlocked provinces to see, the way that water affects all of us. And I think the final thing that we've done, or the other, let's say not final, but the other key thing we've done is making sure that we co-create, so that it's we use the adage "nothing about us without us." So making sure that it's not just Students on Ice that decides and defines a program, but that it's co-created with the youth, with the communities that we're trying to support. And making sure that we help to build capacity and support leadership and provide a platform for diverse voices.
That's fantastic. I think that there'd be a lot of organizations be very hopeful to get where you already are. That's amazing. Fantastic. I don't know, Gillian, do you want to hop in next?
Sure. Yeah. So I think when we look at all organizations and the importance of diversity, being able to allow people to show up to work and bring their full self really gives them the opportunity to operate at their full potential, which offers all organizations opportunities to attract and retain really qualified and competent staff. I think that's one of the big drivers that we see in increasing diversity. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it leads to better outcomes for everyone in terms of individuals' personal fulfillment in their careers, as well as organizational successes. And I think we end up achieving that through a variety of different mechanisms, means, and actions that we all can take. So I know internally within Stantec here, we have a huge inclusion and diversity initiative when it comes to promoting and acknowledging and hiring people from a wide variety of backgrounds, so looking at eliminating the biases. But we also need to look outside of our organization, because we work obviously within many different communities, and we look at supporting and elevating new people to enter the engineering profession. So we do look at sponsoring youth programs. We're big advocates for the STEM program, and then also looking at supporting some of the professional organizations that are focused around getting more people from different backgrounds into the engineering profession. Because at the end of the day, I think that's going to be something that that benefits everyone, not just individual organizations.
Fantastic. And Geni?
I think from EcoCanada's perspective, we take a look at it both from within our organization and outside. In both of the cases, we find that mentorships are really a big tool to help build the confidence and skills of individuals who may not be job ready when it comes to reaching out to a more diverse group of individuals. So it gives us an opportunity to hire individuals who may not come with the full package, and to reach out to individuals who are looking for a change, looking for an opportunity to try something new. We also find that the wage subsidy program that we have is really useful in giving people a first shot at a job that they wouldn't normally get an opportunity to take. There are employers, especially small employers in the environmental sector, who struggle financially to be able to support a diverse workforce, but can sometimes accommodate greater diversity through the wage subsidy programs. So I think those are our main options for or tools for helping to diversify our own workforce.
And Carli, how about for your organization? What does diversity look like there?
Well, it's interesting as I'm listening to these much larger organizations speak about how intentional they are about, and not just intentional about recruiting diversely, but also the tools and mechanisms and policies for it. And we have a slightly different perspective in that we are a very small organization that is just starting to grow. And when I think we kind of look for a moment at our staff and who we work with, and it is a very diverse group, just kind of as by focusing on respectful individuals who are interested in the work we're doing, we are naturally recruiting a fairly diverse group. Now, as we go forward, I think we need to be very intentional about it and think hard about our policies and how we continue this trajectory. But I think we recognize the value of bringing in different perspectives and how water-related issues, especially with our community partners, are diverse. And so understanding that, we require a lot of different people's perspectives and understandings. So yeah, I think for us, it's about different people's backgrounds. It creates a very creative, fun work environment, and one where I think we feel better equipped to deal with really challenging and unique situations.
Makes sense. We have a question here from our attendees that seems like it fits in perfectly right now, which is the water industry has a higher percentage of women and minority groups than perhaps other engineering and construction sectors. Why is that? And that seems particularly fitting when we have a panel here with 5 women on it. So does anyone like to take a stab at that? Certainly the water industry seems to be a bit of ahead of the curve on the diversity side of things. Anyone have any thoughts on why that might be?
Well, I think from our experience, a lot of the participants in the water industry, especially in the water and wastewater treatment facilities, are municipal or county governments that are trying to walk the talk for their political objectives. And so it makes it a little bit more imperative for them to reach out and to diversify their workforce. For small and medium-sized organizations, which are just starting out, it's always going to be more of a challenge to diversify. And so I think to the extent that these larger organizations are leading the charge, that plays a role in the more diverse nature of the water industry.
Perfect. Anyone else like to jump in?
Just a few thoughts on reflections. I think, I know in Anishinaabeg culture, women are seen as the water keepers, so there's a very natural role for women to be involved in the water sciences. And other cultures worldwide that I've had the pleasure of interacting with, women do have a strong role in protecting those resources. As far as newcomers, I think water issues are at a forefront in many communities around the world, maybe a little less so in Canada. And so there's a natural draw on experience and exposure and an immediacy in why it's important to study water sciences.
Interesting. It makes me wonder also about the statistics in terms of ages. I wonder if it's a bit of a younger audience as well. We notice just here at Actual Media that our water-focused products, webinars, magazines get a lot more social media engagement, and I think it's a lot to do with the demographic as well. So I think that we're doing a good job attracting young people in this sector. Excellent. All right, well, let's move on to which is our planned question number 2, is that now that we've defined what our diversity should ideally look like, and in some cases we're getting there very quickly, what are some of the ways in which increasing diversity can positively impact workplaces in the water sector? I think Gillian mentioned certainly the personal benefits of feeling respected for who you are and feeling comfortable being who you are in the workplace. From the business side of it, what are the benefits for employers? Does it increase creativity? Does it generate higher quality outputs? Does it increase financial performance? What are the benefits to a more diverse water industry?
I can start off with that one.
Sure.
I think there are numerous benefits for the organization. Not only are there personal benefits for the individual, but stats have shown that businesses that have boards that are made up of a diverse group tend to perform better financially in the long run. In addition, when you have the diversity and a bunch of people come into the table, you do end up with opportunities for more creativity. You have different perspectives that come in and people that can kind of make you think a little bit outside of the box, which can generate innovation and also improve with productivity. So the benefits to a diverse workforce, I think, are just immeasurable in terms of your ability to perform and your ability to be relevant in today's society.
Makes sense. Anyone else like to?
I can think of a few ways from our perspective that for us, we are training a very diverse group of people who come from all sorts of backgrounds, and some have learning related challenges. And for us, having a diverse staff that can relate to different people really helps us do better at the training. I would say it's absolutely crucial. And I think if we had a whole series of, type A engineers, no offense, it would be very hard to do the training that we do. And in some projects, certain staff shine as the ones that really get the key to that particular group, and in other projects, it's a completely different set of staff. So I think it just allows us to do our job better and to reach a broader group of individuals.
Makes sense. Does anyone on this panel notice any changes in terms of leadership in that sense? There are certainly a lot of studies recently supporting, certainly female leadership in terms of empathy and compassion and different things that come in that way. Certainly when I used to be the editor of a construction magazine, there had been a lot of research surrounding female operators and how they had far less accidents. There's a lot of statistical reasons to encourage women to get into very male-dominated sectors. And by all means, I don't want to focus entirely on women on this one, but it just happened to be stats that came into my mind. Is there more emphasis on female leadership or on more diverse leadership as well? I mean, it's one thing to bring people into the organization and bring youth in, but are they getting to be in important roles that are going to be our future generation that's going to keep things going once we're all retired and sitting on sailboats or whatever we do when we retire?
I can speak definitely at Stantec. That is one of the goals that they have, and they've actually been quite successful in the sustainability report that we put out. I think they've looked at wage disparity, and that's been corrected across the board. And then you look at the number of women that are getting promoted at this particular moment. We have a higher rate of women being promoted within the organization than men over the past couple of years, specifically targeting, looking at how can we do things different, how can we do things better when it comes to creating not only a diverse workforce, but also creating diversity among the different levels and layers of leadership within the organization.
That's great.
I think from EcoCanada's perspective, as a nonprofit organization, we do tend to attract more women than men to the organization to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So in some cases, diversity means looking for more male perspectives in the boardroom and in the meeting rooms. But aside from that, we've really looked at ways to, I guess, convey the importance of a mindful and respectful work environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, comes partly through the I guess the more female emphasis in our employment. And that tends to allow us to attract more individuals from a diverse group of backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of a cycle. We have a diverse population in our economy or in our organization, in part because we started off with, I guess, a more female-oriented leadership team.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, let's dig into well, a lot of the stuff we've started talking about a little bit in our intros, I think. So what efforts or programs currently exist to increase diversity in the water sector? These can certainly be ones that you're working on internally with your own organizations, or they can be external programs that you're familiar with as well. I'd love to talk about what's working. And I think it's good to keep in mind that a lot of the people who are tuning in today are likely coming from organizations that probably need to drive more diversity. They maybe don't have a female leader, and they maybe don't have a very diverse place at the moment. So some of it might be a bit challenging in terms of figuring out where to start. But if we can talk a little bit about some of the programs that exist and certainly ways to get involved with those things, and anything you can do in that sense to shine a light on what you've seen in the industry, would be fantastic. Do you want to start? Who shall we pick here? Tara, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can do. So yeah, I mean, specifically, so one of the key programs that I work on is Blue Futures Pathways, as I mentioned. Mm-hmm. And that's in partnership with EcoCanada and also with the Center for Ocean Ventures and Entrepreneurship on the East Coast, as well as with MyTax and the Ocean Supercluster. And it was actually set up specifically to increase diversity in the sustainable blue economy, so all of the water sectors. We did some research back in 2020, which did show that particularly the marine industry is, aging white male. And so, in terms of sustainability and in terms of encouraging diversity, we felt, it was important that we address that. And what we were hearing as well from the people that we spoke to was, employers were saying it's not that we're not interested in a diverse workforce or taking on sort of younger, diverse youth. We're not really sure where to find them or how to engage them. And then the youth were saying, what is this sustainable blue economy? What are the options and the opportunities? And, how does this relate to, living in Northwest Territories or living in, Alberta? So, first of all, we started by recruiting our own, as I said, our own diverse team. So I work as a team of 5, and 4 of them are under the age of 30. 3 of us are non-white, 4 of us are women. So I think representation, if we're going to go out and talk to people about Blue Futures Pathways, we need to sort of look the part. And ensure that people can relate to us. And Blue Futures Pathways has 5 key elements to it. So this also came out of our research. So the first one is around education and sort of really talking about what is the sustainable blue economy, what does diversity look like in the sustainable blue economy. And we're specifically creating learning modules that are focused at that 14 to 30 age range. I mean, they're open to anyone. But in terms of the sort of the funding that comes with them, we also provide training. So that's the second part. So training in the hard and soft skills. So again, in our research, a lot of the employers were saying, you know, we can train people on the job. What is harder is getting people to show up and ensuring that people feel comfortable in the workplace and feel included. So there's lots of training that we're planning to do around those softer skills, and then as well as things like you know, being able to tell your story, being able to network, understanding what an inclusive workplace looks like, so that you can help shape that. The third thing is that we focus on jobs as well, so encouraging employers and youth to look out for jobs or internships or co-ops in the ocean and water sectors. Right now we have around 50 interns. And what's great is that we're supporting them through the learning piece, the education piece, so that employers, you know, have trained youth that come and have an understanding of the sustainable blue economy. And then we're also supporting youth to find those employers that are open to engaging them where they're at. The fourth thing that's really important, and EcoCanada mentioned this, and it's thanks to EcoCanada that we can offer this in the main, is the salary stipends. So if you're a youth that, you know, has a certain interest and you can already qualify for a salary stipend, and you can go to an employer and say, you know, I can provide you with up to $7,500 of salary dollars towards my employment, or, you know, likewise employers can have that prerequisite already set up. That's a huge benefit. And the fifth thing really is mentorship, which has already been mentioned, but I don't think it can be emphasized enough. I know when we were talking, particularly with Inuit youth, they would say to us, you know, that's all very well, but we don't see anybody looking like us, talking to us about these kinds of jobs and this kind of employment. And so that has been a huge part of the Blue Futures Pathways program, ensuring that mentorship goes alongside, you know, the jobs, training, the education, and the salary stipends.
I think I see your head nodding in agreement there, Carli. Did you want to add to that?
Yes, definitely. I think we've reached similar conclusions and are working to similar types of programming. Our reach is smaller, but I think the things that we're recognizing as absolutely crucial to increasing access to the water science education and the training opportunities. For us, it's bringing the training opportunities to communities. Way too often, people are asked to travel away from their support networks, go to newer, bigger cities, and take a very intense training that's not necessarily geared for them. So what we try to do is create a training opportunity that is in the community with a support network. There's an element of why is this work important for me, but also for my community, to give a sense of purpose and connection to the broader career rather than just seeing this as a way of gaining money. I think being flexible in how the types of learning opportunities you create has been really important for us. Recognizing there are different styles of learners. We have people from Northern Labrador who really kind of rebel against formal education and what that looks like, sitting in desks, and there are a lot of bad memories associated with that. So we are really working on training on the land, providing opportunities and bringing in community elders and knowledge holders to contribute to our training. So we're doing as much learning as our participants are, and incorporating language into it. So I think being open to, if I can kind of make it more broad generalizations, it's being open to reciprocal learning, emphasizing ways of demonstrating to participants that their knowledge is already strong and they have a lot to contribute. And here is a career that you can see yourself in. We also, as we deliver more and more programming, we now have a great group of alumni. And so we're recognizing this is a crucial part of what we're doing, is connecting alumni from different projects. Some of them are becoming trainers that work with us. Others or meeting up with, drinking water interns or meeting up with environmental science interns, and recognizing that group of individuals who've gone through the training really support each other and eventually are going to become role models to younger individuals who can then see themselves in these types of careers. So I think bringing training to places where people feel supported and feel strong, and having the type of training that you can kind of gain confidence and have the time to practice and feel capable of taking on the next steps in your career is really important.
And I'd like to just kind of add and kind of take things in a little bit of a different direction in terms of talking to people who might be working at organizations where they feel that they don't have support for diversity. What we found is, like, now is, I think it was Tara that mentioned it earlier, we're at just a brilliant point in time where this conversation is so relevant to so many people that you can probably start engaging with having these conversations, which is kind of where it starts. And I just want to read a quote that I think is really relevant to this particular topic. It's by Margaret Mead, and it's, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that has ever been done." And so when you look within your organizations, what we have found has been tremendously successful is not a grassroots, not a top-down, but actually a combination of both. And having your top leader developing a policy or a framework that then allows the grassroots organizations to really own the initiative that they want to perpetuate within the organization, and they just grab hold of it and they get running. We get like little small committees that focus on specific aspects of diversity, and then that just ends up permeating throughout the organization. And it's change, and change always is something that takes time. But I think we're at that kind of perfect moment in time where, there's the inflection point, and once it starts going, it'll take off quite quickly. So for people that are looking at how do you get the conversation started within your own organization, I think now is the time to just have that conversation.
Fantastic. Did you want to add anything, Geni?
Sure. Yeah. So I think one of the things that we found is that having good information about what competencies are required for a particular role is essential to hiring a diverse workforce. And the reason I say that is that all too often job descriptions are written by the individuals who are either not familiar with the role, so they're in an HR position, or they're managers and they've got an idea of what is involved in that particular role, but they don't do the job on the ground. So having a well-established set of validated competencies is a very useful tool for all organizations, small or large, to be able to say, okay, these are the skills, these are the competencies that are actually required. And it gives them an opportunity to say, where can we step in and provide training to individuals in order to ensure they're successful at this particular role. So as kind of a segue to what EcoCanada is currently doing, we are developing some competency profiles for the blue economy right now as part of a Future Skills Center program. And we're hoping to be able to integrate into those competencies some learning outcomes that organizations can take and develop into training programs, or whether it's a post-secondary education or a training institution or the organization themselves, so that we can enfold more individuals into the potential workforce. And that brings us takes us a long way from the skills gaps that we suffer from.
Thank you. All right, before I move us along to the next couple of questions, I'm also just going to remind everyone, if you haven't already, please cast your votes in the polls. We'll come back and look at those poll questions in a minute. And I have a question for Tara before we move on here too, which is, it says here, Tara mentioned that some companies aren't aware of where they can recruit staff from diverse backgrounds. And I'm wondering, actually it's more for the whole panel, I'm wondering if our speakers have suggestions for strategies these companies can use for recruitment. I think that's a fantastic question. I don't know, Tara, since you were mentioned first, possibly you should jump in.
Yes, I think well, at Blue Futures Pathways, we have set up a platform. It's called the Port. So it's the Portal for Opportunities, Resources, and Talent. It's a website, but we do have a job board on there that's free to use, and we are actively promoting the job board among diverse employers seeking out diverse jobs across the country, and also encouraging diverse youth to apply. I think also looking for a diverse workforce also means, who do you partner with and where do you ask? So when, traditionally students on ICE, for example, when we do our recruitment, we of course have our social media channels and our usual channels, but actually contacting organizations, for example, newcomer organizations or indigenous organizations, and actually putting it in front of the right people in those organizations, doing your outreach a little bit more widely, perhaps contacting people that you wouldn't normally get in touch with. Sometimes you could be surprised as to where you could do your recruitment, and also thinking not only about typical organizations that recruit, but also looking at all aspects of the job. So, for example, recently we've been looking for an information management intern to help us with knowledge management. Now, that's not really a wheelhouse of students on ICE, hence why we're looking for the support. But putting that out, for example, to universities, thinking about students, thinking about whether that could be a part-time job. Does it have to be somebody working full-time in an office? Can it be something that can be done remotely? So again, it's often meeting people where they're at, looking at similar types of roles and where do they recruit people from. I think there are many different ways that can be done. And one other thing I think that we may go on to talk about was also exploring, the language that you use. And I know this has been touched upon, but we did a little bit of research ourselves, and there's some quite good resources out there that talk about the kind of language that you use. And apparently, when people see job descriptions, men, if they meet around 60% of the criteria, apply for the job. Whereas women will not apply for a job unless they feel like they meet 100% of the criteria. So when you're recruiting, thinking about what is really essential here. Maybe there are things in here that I put in that are not so essential, and maybe they're nice to have. What is it that was, really determines this job? And then what are some of the language that we're using as well when we're recruiting? So apparently, words like analyze, determine, expert are all very sort of male-dominated words. We can be very gendered in the way that whereas collaborate and supportive tend to attract women. And that made a huge difference in the way that you recruit. And you could also be ageist, you talk about fast-paced and dynamic and so on. And, without knowing it, we can be looking for things without meaning to. And so I think when we're recruiting, just being very careful about what is it essential that we're trying to do here, and what do we really need for this job, and what's essential, and then where do we go? How can we think outside the box when we look for those people? And those are some of the things that we've done and that have worked for us.
Thank you. I think you mentioned a really interesting thing that hasn't come up in a diversity conversation I've had recently, which is the ageist as well. Certainly, we're not talking about attracting older adults or elders, and there is a lot of really great experience to be had from including people like that in an organization as well. But certainly when we're looking to recruit those more junior or fresh-faced roles, the tendency is to want to recruit younger folks as well. So I don't know if that's something anyone's been working with within their organizations at all, like looking at any attracting older adults or elders. I would love to hear if that's something that you've come across.
So we do, we're often looking for experienced people just in our field, because in engineering, you need the experienced individuals. So it's definitely part of many of the postings that we do, but I don't think we've necessarily focused on it from the perspective of the ageist side. It's just we're looking for somebody with experience, because there's a lot of value in that.
Makes sense. Fantastic. Sorry, did anyone else want to comment on the recruitment? I think that's a really great question in terms of other strategies for recruiting. I love the language. That makes so much sense. I think all of us were nodding our heads in agreement.
Yeah.
You were talking about that, Tara.
Yeah. I think the other thing that sorry, go ahead, Carli. Nope.
I was just going to say, I like what Tara said, check your assumptions and how you're writing the job ad. And also, I think even in what you are really looking for in the position, right? I think putting more emphasis on the value that different perspectives bring and stepping back to think if we're looking for that fast-paced, very productive individual, like what does that mean? And I feel very lucky to work with an organization that's very flexible and recognizes everyone comes with a different type of life, and we have part-time opportunities. We have in many cases for mothers with young children, we're able to adjust travel time and get different perspectives that way. But also what we've come across and we try to think about a lot is how we view credentials and questioning why is a credential seen better as experience in a job, and making sure that we're open to the individual and who they are and what they bring, and thinking about their skill set in a broader, more holistic way, rather than just looking for a graduate degree or whatever it might be.
Agreed. Any other thoughts there before we?
Yeah, the only thing that I'd add, I completely agree with what both Tara and Carli said. I think language is key to being able to appeal to a broader, more diverse audience. Some of the things that have come up in the last few years, just because this is such a big topic, is there are more and more groups as well forming. And just to give two examples, there's the National Organization of Minority Architects, the National Society for Black Engineers. There's these kinds of organizations that some of them have annual conferences, and so we often go and sponsor those conferences and have hiring booths so that we can go directly to some of the minority groups to make sure that we are looking to get that diverse group of people entering the workforce.
That's great. All right, I'm going to jump to the poll questions quickly. We somehow have 10 minutes left. Time flies when you're having a great chat. So the first poll question is, what is the biggest benefit related to increasing diversity in Canada's water workforce? I'm looking through and it looks like right now, so the options are increased creativity, higher quality outputs, being more engaged, increased financial performance, or other. And it's got here at 76% of the vote. Leading right now is higher quality outputs. Would anyone disagree with this from our panel, or any thoughts here to share?
I mean, I think all of the answers are valid. There's so many benefits to having a diverse workforce.
Agreed. I think we'll agree to agree and disagree on that one then a little bit.
Yeah.
Awesome. And the next poll's question, I'm going to look through, as I say, we're trying to fit everything in here. What is the biggest challenge related to increasing diversity in Canada's water workforce? And this is actually great because it kind of runs into my next question as well. So the options here are diversity training can trigger defensiveness. Effects of diversity training might not last. Diversity might disrupt group cohesiveness, or other. And pretty much other is coming across. What would you say? I mean, by all means, if you think it's something different, please pipe up. What is the biggest challenge related to increasing diversity in Canada's water workforce? So let's talk about the challenges. What is preventing us? I mean, as I said, we're talking to a panel of people who have, and myself included, have had a career talking about diversity and and driving more engagement from different groups throughout many years. So I think we have to look at it from an outside perspective, which is there are a lot of companies that have someone like one of us who joined the team and are like, all right, guys, it's time. And they're trying to build their team and build that momentum. So what challenges are still the biggest ones that are preventing us from being able to move forward as an entire industry?
So I can add to that. I think the challenges associated with diversity are no different than the challenges associated with any form of change. Change is difficult for everyone, and it tends to take, but the reality is the only thing that is constant is change. So you have to be adaptable and agile. And I think that's, like in my experience, that's the biggest barrier, is people being hesitant to the change, not understanding the change, not knowing what questions to ask to make sure they understand the change. And so just making sure that you're mindful of that, and aware of the fact that there's going to be some hesitancy because simply it is change.
That's fair. Any challenges that you've seen, Carli or Tara, if you're ready to jump in?
Go ahead, Tara, if you like, and then I can comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, it makes people very uncomfortable because it makes you begin to really look inwards. I think with everything that happened, over the past year, it begins to make you really sort of examine and dig very deep. And for a lot of people, sitting with that discomfort is too much, and it can be very triggering. And so you do get defensiveness, or you do get resistance, or you do get denial. And all of those, I think, are all valid in the sense that they're all valid emotions if you're sort of undoing many years or, decades of what you've learned, or having to unlearn things or do things differently, as we were just saying about change. So I think it's also just acknowledging the discomfort, sitting with that, allowing teams the space to discuss the discomfort. Like we have a monthly, actually two now, we have once a month one of our team meetings. So we have a weekly team meeting, and one of them is dedicated towards diversity, equity and inclusion, and like actual practical things that the organization is doing. And then we have a second monthly meeting, which is more of a discussion. So we have a couple of the team members that lead that discussion. They come up with topics, things that are just happening around the world. Doesn't have to be necessarily very specifically about our work, but just things that people are impacted by or interested in discussing, and sort of trying to relate a bit of that to work. And I think that's really helped, because it's a non-judgmental space, if you like, just to have those conversations, ask questions, and to sort of grow as a team. So yeah, I would say the challenges are the discomfort and being able to work through that as an organization, and the personal and the professional doesn't really, it's hard to divide those and divorce those. So that's all part of who we are, and we sort of have to accept and work through it.
I think that fits well with what I was going to say as well, is that I think that change or that inclusion of diversity has to be really embodied as to why it's important. There needs to be a complete understanding and appreciation, and like, yes, I'm on board, rather than feeling like a prescription that is being mandated for some reason. And I think part of getting there, as Tara mentioned, is creating an environment where you are open to that change and that challenge, and it's seen as a positive growth for the organization, for the individuals. And so thinking about things in the workplace culture that can create that kind of embrace of challenge and growth. And we have something similar where we have staff bringing podcasts, books, whatever a media source might be, to bring real contemporary issues that we discuss together as staff. And just, so there's a curiosity and an interest in engaging with the world, and then reflecting on that and how it makes us feel as individuals. And I think kind of looking at those habits and practices within the workplace that maybe seem like they are not directly addressing a diversity, but they're helping foster a certain environment that helps individuals embrace diversity.
Great. Well, we have officially got 3 minutes left, and I always like to have a last quick wrap up. Usually I say 1 minute, but today I guess we're getting closer to 30 or 45 seconds each. But my question for you that I would love if you can leave, if you have any advice for an organization that is trying to drive diversity, if attendees go away with one nugget today that they can really take and hopefully apply in some way to their own organization, what would be your advice for them?
I can have a quick soundbite. I would say focus on respect. It all comes down to being able to respect and value individuals.
Fantastic.
And I would say inclusion. You can't have diversity without inclusion.
Makes sense too.
I think from my perspective, it would be that in some cases, business as usual is not going to continue when you move to a more diverse and inclusive workforce. And so being willing to accept that business as usual is going to change is a big part of the success.
That's great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'd say, I talked a lot about recruitment and language, but then also looking internally at what supports you have once you recruit a diverse workforce. So it doesn't just stop at the recruitment stage. It's and ask and listen. Ask questions. How can we support you better? What can we do to make your experience better? And listen and act on what people say.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all to all of our panelists for being part of this important discussion. And I feel like we could talk for a lot more and go on, but, but we're out of time. And also, I'd like to thank our participants for joining in and engaging through the chat feature, questions, poll questions. All of this goes a really long way in infusing these virtual events with a real sense of community. Hopefully, it won't be too much longer before we're able to get back to live events. But for now, thank you for joining us from your home offices, kitchens, basements, bedrooms, and living rooms. We're looking forward to seeing you again on September 15th for our next webinar, which is ensuring reliable access to drinking water. If you follow Actual Media up at the top of your screen, you'll automatically receive notifications for our upcoming webinars. So thank you again, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.